Audacity in 3, 2, 1.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co-host, Marissa Roy. And I feel like it's been a long time since we've done this together.
I was gonna say I've missed you.
I have missed you. I feel like we spend a lot of time together and we're always chatting, but I always love our little sit down chats like this.
Me too. Yeah, it has been a while. I feel like it feels like it's been a while, but it also like has been a few weeks. So I'm excited. This is fun.
We need to get in a few more episodes. We should probably be doing like 2 a week because I'm at 36 weeks pregnant today.
Ooh, how does that feel?
So someone asked me today how I was feeling, and I said, well, as normal as you can feel at 9 months pregnant, I guess. So I feel pretty good. I was reading today. I have this like little app that I read and it gives me all these updates week to week. And I was reading all the symptoms to my husband, and it's like, you can breathe better now because the baby is lower and like not up in your lungs. But because of that, you have like a lot of pelvic pressure. And so I was like reading all these symptoms and he was like, because I have all of those things. And they were talking about like having swollen feet and swollen ankles, swollen legs. And he was like, and, but one of the things I read, it was like literally after giving birth, like that all just goes away like super quickly.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh man, like, I mean, obviously it's I don't know if I can say I'm looking forward to childbirth, but I am looking forward to having ankles again. So
oh man, that's funny. I'm actually curious because I don't think we've talked about this. I don't know if this is something you're comfortable sharing on the podcast, but what's your like birth plan?
So yeah, no, I'm very open to talking about all this. So as a first-time mom, it was kind of difficult trying to create this because I don't really know what to expect. And I was reading all the advice, all the things on the internets and Pinterest. And, I was getting recommendations from followers. And at first I was kind of like, you know what? I don't think I really need a plan because it's going to be very just general. Like I don't want any interventions. I want to try to do everything as natural as possible. And that's kind of it. And then I started going down the rabbit hole of birth plans. And I was like, wow, there's actually way more like stuff to address than I initially thought. So I actually have one, and let me see if I can pull it up. I'm not going to read the entire thing because there's literally so much stuff, because it's like, okay, you have to have your preferred method of delivery. And then do you want pain medication? And then it's like all the different phases. So during labor, what do you want? During delivery, what do you want? After delivery, what do you want? What do you want for your baby? And then you also have to think of, well, what happens if I have an emergency C-section? How do I want that performed? Like,
oh man,
all of these different things. And then it's like, well, if I'm in surgery and something happens, like, well, then I want this to happen and I want my husband to take over. And
oh, so it's like a ton of contingency planning.
Yes, which I understand that, like, I think the biggest reason why I didn't want to have a birth plan to begin with was I didn't want to have this like sheet that I felt like I had to follow to 100%. Otherwise my birth like failed, or I don't know. I just didn't want to set myself up for these expectations. And then just knowing that like so much can happen during labor that you have literally no control over. So I at least wanted something though that like, hey, if everything does happen to go right, then this is what it is. So basically I just want like minimal. So like minimal traffic in the room, minimal people, like minimal interventions. I want to be able to try to do some things on my own, like be able to walk around the room if I want to, be able to like birth in different positions, because a lot of hospitals will just try to sit you on your back and that's it. And just like after delivery, I feel like there was so much like immediate skin to skin contact. And then I don't know if you've heard of delayed cord clamping.
Refresh me. It's familiar.
Yeah. So it's like, the baby's in your placenta. So there is research saying that if you delay cord clamping, even by like 30 seconds to up to like 1 to 2 minutes, the baby can have more blood kind of pumped into their system. So it's kind of like,
Huh.
I saw a really cool visual. It's like you have two glasses of water, or what, two glasses, one's filled with water and a sponge and one is empty. And you take the sponge out and you put it above the other one and you squeeze it, and like all of that fluid. So that's kind of like the analogy where it's like when your baby is going through birth, it kind of like all of that residual fluid gets kind of stuck in the cord. And if you delay clamping just by like 30 seconds to a minute, you can like restore that much blood volume back into their systems.
Very cool.
And it's been, shown to have some positive effects for the baby. So just like stuff like that. So I went down the rabbit hole and I was kind of glad I did. But long story short, just like minimal interventions. I want to try to do it unmedicated and as minimal like intervention. So like, I don't want to be induced. I don't want to have my water broken. And again, this is like, if everything could go 100% according to plan, and I recognize that that may not happen. So I'm just being very optimistic, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Well, it's like they ask you to plan that too. And you're like, well, I guess like this is best case, then like trickle down everything else.
Yeah. Plan B, plan C, plan D.
Plan Z.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing is like, I didn't want to have all these contingencies because I mean, like, I don't know, just there's so much that can happen. And like I was reading another girl's birth story on Instagram, and wow, like she literally got to the hospital and delivered in like 10 minutes.
Jesus.
So, so there's just like, you just never know how your pregnancy is going to progress and what it's going to feel like. And I was talking with Mariah, and she said that she actually went to the hospital that morning because she was having, I don't even know, she was having no signs of labor. And they're like, yeah, like you're not going to have this baby for a while. And she ended up going into labor that night. So
oh, wow.
You just never know.
Huh. Wow. Well, I'm excited for you. Obviously it's coming soon. So I'm really excited to obviously see the baby and just kind of see that whole journey unfold. But totally not on track with that.
Not at all.
Our topic for this week is going to be to staying on track on the weekends, which has been a very often brought up topic within our coaching team. I'm sure within yours too.
Definitely.
And just like really trying to figure out those damn weekends. So I guess to kind of frame this, like, what Christina wrote was Friday through Sundays, like almost half the week, right? The majority of the week is 4 out of 7 days. So like 3 out of 7 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, is your whole weekend, right? And I always tell people this too, like a lot of times the biggest mistake that I see a lot of people make is they will try to hold themselves accountable, and they're pretty good on Monday through Friday during the day, or like even just Monday through Thursday. But like Friday night quickly turns from, oh, I'll just have one drink, or I'll just have one cookie, or this or that, to screw it, I am starting over on Monday. And that is what we want to prevent today with this episode, by just giving you a new perspective, some tactical tips and tricks, and whatever we can to help you reframe and stay better on track with your goals on the weekends.
Yes. And I think we should also kind of start off saying that you and I have struggled in this area too. So it's not like we are perfect and are 100% perfect here on out moving forward, that we still have issues too. So we understand the, what the difference is sometimes between the weekdays versus weekends. But yes, a lot of our clients have this struggle. And what I typically start off with is, instead of replying back, okay, well, here's all the things that you can do, my number one thing is, okay, well, let's figure out what's causing you to fall off track, and why are you falling off track? So is it peer pressure? Is it because you're eating out? Is it because you're not planning accordingly? Is it because you're not packing snacks? Are you out of the house all day long? So trying to figure out what exactly it is and kind of like why it's happening. So I think that maybe even if you just like pause right here, and if you're driving, keep driving. But if you're at home, or if you're in a position where you can, just kind of pause it and like really think about what is the big difference between weekdays and weekends, and what's kind of what the issue is. Because I think that that's really going to help you be able to narrow it down and be able to apply this episode to your life. Because again, we're just going to just throw out some general tips and tricks, but really, I guess, figuring out what is going to apply best to your situation.
I love that. And making this interactive. Yeah, I mean, if you're driving, you could hit pause and you could just think about it.
Yeah.
Even. But yeah. So I think really just like definitely reflecting, like always when you're faced with a struggle or a roadblock or a bottleneck to something, like always just start asking yourself questions if you don't have somebody to ask you those questions. Because obviously that's what we do, is we just ask questions almost to the point where our clients just get annoyed. Like, why can't you just give me the answer? Like, because you have to figure this out yourself. So ask yourself those questions. What is causing you to fall off track? I often tend to ask, like, what is the thought process? Like, at what point are you thinking screw it versus like, oh, it's okay, I can just have one and be fine, right? And so I think definitely figuring out what's causing you to fall off track, why you're falling off track, and then really just figuring out what being on track means to you. And so I was kind of looking at this from like two different lenses, because on one hand, being on track could mean you have specific goals, macros that you need to hit, and you need to, be on point, pack snacks, do all these things, and just be prepared all the time. And, if you're in a fat loss phase, or if you are just really trying to be regimented, that could be something that you should do. And it could be a part of what being on track means to you. But I think for a lot of people just trying to make lifestyle switches, on the weekends, the main difference for most people is you sleep in a little bit. You don't have, a start time for work. So you like roll out of bed, have a slow morning, maybe you delay breakfast a little bit, or maybe you just skip breakfast because, you're going out to lunch and you're going out to dinner with friends and you have all these social events. And so the main difference is like oftentimes like the meal timing and just like when you could potentially get your workouts in, if you're working out at all. And so I think like really reframing and looking at like, what is the priority for staying on track? Like, what does that actually mean to you? Because for a lot of people, it's just making healthier swaps when you're out to eat, when you're doing things, instead of saying like, oh, I need to pack all my meals for the weekend. Like, no, like, how can we center this meal out around a lean protein source? How can we make a better choice than we would if we were saying, screw it, I'm going to eat everything in sight? So I think really just assessing your priorities and what that means relative to your goals can really help you to clarify, like, what do you really need to do on the weekends? Because most of the time, what you need to do isn't meal prepping on the weekends. It isn't hitting the gym at 6 a.m. But for some reason, we tend to hold ourselves to that weekday standard, even on the weekends. And that's what throws us off.
Yeah. And I think it's really important. And I feel like we say this almost in like every single episode. It's like, what is the context, right? Like, are you dieting? Are you in a fat loss phase? Because you actually might need to have a little bit more discipline, and your weekend might look a little different than someone who is in a muscle building phase and they've been there for, 6 to 9 to, 12 months, and they can be a little bit more fluid and not as rigid with their goals. And so I think it's always important to think about that, because again, your actions want to align with your goals. So if you're trying to lose weight and you're going out to eat every single meal on the weekends and you're not tracking and you're just saying YOLO and you're having all these drinks, you're probably not going to see fat loss, or you're not going to see it as quickly. So that's very different than someone who is just kind of maintaining, or just like doesn't really have a big physique goal at the moment. So I do say that because I do have clients right now who are in that kind of position, and they have to make sure that their actions are aligning with their goals. So yeah, I think that's really, really important to frame before we get into everything.
Yeah. I have one more thing on that too, because I think it's really important to go back to like the goal setting episode that we just did, because a lot of people I think are like visual learners or like to see things chronologically or like to see the bigger picture. I mean, we're human beings. Like we really struggle to stay focused in the now. Like we really struggle to be present. We spend a lot of time ruminating on the past. We spend a lot of time being anxious about the future. And so if we don't have something that's concrete that actually shows us that's like future plan of like, what is what I'm doing right now doing to contribute to my bigger picture, we can often like chalk something up as a loss or fall off track easier because we just don't have that foresight. So one thing that we were talking about on one of our team office hours this past week was kind of like clients who will like look at situations in the future and like almost chalk it up as a loss like before they even get there. So like, oh, like I'm going out of town this weekend, like Saturday, Sunday, like I know like where we're going out to eat, but Friday, like they're cooking at X person's house and you know, I don't know what they're making. So like I'll just like eat intuitively. And like I appreciate the intention there of like I am setting an intention to eat intuitively and mindfully when I'm there. But if we don't know what's happening there, how could we chalk that up as a loss and make a plan to almost like not have a plan, right? Because you could very well show up and it could be a chicken and vegetables night. Like, how would you know, right? And
woo, so exciting.
Right. So my point there was again, look at context, because if you are in a more relaxed phase in your journey, that's absolutely okay. Do that. Take the weekend off, like just eat mindfully, listen to your hunger cues. That's always really good practice to have. But this client in particular that I'm speaking about, she's in a fat loss phase in the very beginning stages of it. And so like for her, I encouraged her and pushed her to still track whatever it was she ate on that Friday night. She doesn't have to hit her macros. She doesn't have to put the pressure on to be perfect. But I just said, let's just stay a little bit more aware than just saying, I'm going to eat intuitively, because we do have this short-term goal of being more disciplined. And I want you to understand what that means in this context, because for the past year, I made her stick through a long and grueling reverse diet and maintenance phase for a whole year. Like, I don't know how she did it in hindsight. I'm so proud of her, but, but she was patient with me with the process. Now she's finally cutting. And so what she was used to doing on those weekends, which was totally fine then, is like, I want you to take it one little step further now that we're in this cutting phase, because that context matters. And so really painting that bigger picture for her made a huge difference, because I said like, hey, we're going to do this a little bit more, you know, on point or intense or whatever, even on the weekends, because look at the time frame here. We've got 12 weeks. And then after that, we're going back to having that be totally okay. And just like being able to take a day off tracking whenever we want. But right now, the priority is this, and this is going to get us there faster. So that really helped her to see why she needed to do something like that. But again, it just reinforces like, why is context so important?
Yeah. And I think, and this is something that we had talked about later in the outline, is kind of like being able to plan and develop the skill of tracking in situations that we aren't 100% in control of. So if we go over to someone's house, if we go to a barbecue, if there's like charcuterie, you know, whatever it might be, instead of just saying, well, I don't know how to track, or I don't know what there's going to be, so I'm just not going to do it at all. If we're in a fat loss phase and we're going to be there for 12 weeks, well, again, we don't want to just say, well, you have to stay at home and eat every single meal at your house. That's just not realistic, and it's not very fun. And then you don't want people to be like, oh, well, so-and-so's dieting, so we'll see you in 3 months. So we want to be able to develop the skill. And we talk about this. We'd rather you be imperfectly consistent than perfectly inconsistent. Ooh. So I know. Ooh, mic drop. We're done.
That's it. That's the episode.
Yeah. So we don't want you to beat yourself up if you aren't perfect on the weekends. Like, again, if you go out to a restaurant, there's a good chance that whatever you put in, even if you try really, really hard, it's probably not going to be 100%, because there's always that room for variance. And, you know, if you're not bringing your scale, which we don't really want you to, and like things like that, there's going to be a little room for error. So I mean, we would just rather you do that than just take the entire weekend off, and just really work on having those skills and being okay with not being 100% perfect all the time, because we want to really remove that all or nothing mentality and mindset around food and around tracking, because it's just going to make it that much more realistic and something that you can stick to long term. If you just kind of have this, well, it might be 80%, but that's okay. Whatever. I'm going to track my next meal at home and I'm back on track.
Yeah. I am going to take that quote and I'm going to make an infographic out of it. And I'm going to put it on Instagram. And so everybody who's listening to this podcast, you're going to know I plagiarized Christina verbatim. I'm not going to give her credit.
That's fine. That's
I'm
fine.
just kidding. I will give you credit, but you're going to see that on Instagram probably in the next like 2 weeks. So that's great. I love that quote. I think that like speaks to so much that we talk about, but yeah, I totally agree. So let's get into some tactical tips then.
Yeah, definitely. So I feel like you almost could probably go back to the Thanksgiving episode that we did, because a lot of those kind of tactics are going to be the same as far as like, making sure that you are making good decisions and you can plan ahead. So if you know you're going out to eat for lunch or dinner, like, save some carbs and some fats, load up on protein and nutrient dense foods throughout the day. So that gives you some wiggle room whenever you go out and you don't feel like you have to eat plain chicken and broccoli when you can go out and still order something that you love, especially if it's, a restaurant that you really like, you have a favorite dish or something like that. So definitely that's just kind of how we structure our food choices throughout the day. And one of the things that I really like is, if you can, try to stick to somewhat of a routine, or maybe if your routine isn't going to be the exact same during the weekdays, having like a weekend routine. So something that maybe you sleep in a little bit later, maybe you don't get up and go to the gym right away, but you still kind of have some sort of structure where it's like, okay, this is the weekend, this is what we do. And I really like the idea of kind of having healthy habits that you're still sticking with. So like making sure you're hydrated, maybe starting your morning with like your greens drink or whatever it might be, because I just think that one good decision leads to another. So let's say, even if you do happen to get in a workout early in the morning, that I feel like your kind of like mentality changes throughout the day. You're like, well, I've been drinking my water, I'm hitting my proteins, I got my workout in, and it just makes it a tiny bit easier whenever you go out to eat to make like a better decision rather, and that's not to say like, well, if I get donuts in the morning, like, am I setting myself for like bad decisions the rest of the day? It's like, no. But just having those things in place can make it a little bit easier when the time comes to whatever it is that you're doing on the weekend that might lead you astray.
No, but you're probably more likely to.
Yeah.
Right. Like it does stuff to the psyche. I like what you said about a separate weekend routine. What I've been doing ever since I ran the little like free 10-day challenge thing that was super fun. What it really did for me and what I was trying to get out of it was really solidifying a morning routine, because a morning routine is something that you can do no matter what day of the week it is. And what I really encourage is have something like that sets your tone for the day. It doesn't have to be a full hour-long workout, but like, for example, I wake up, first thing I do, I use the bathroom and I take a cold rinse, and it sucks, but I've literally done it every day for over 6 months. And it's just like, I started my day off with something that I did not want to do. And it just puts me in that mindset of, you got through probably the hardest part of waking up, like everything else from here is easy. So I do that. And then once I like brush my teeth, put clothes on the weekends, it's greens, water, coffee, meditate, journal, and then do whatever. But like, I've been trying to enforce that on the weekends, which is much harder because you sleep in and yada, yada. We had even people over last weekend. So I was literally like meditating while they were walking back and forth, like brushing their teeth, getting ready for the day. So it can be a little difficult, but enforcing a morning routine really just enforces like setting the tone for your day. If you do get a workout in first thing, like I have never met a single person that feels that getting a workout in like doesn't set them up in a better mindset for the rest of the day. And here's a concept as well, something that I was talking about with a couple of friends a few weeks ago, was a Keystone habit. And a Keystone habit is something that is like the pinnacle, I don't know what the best word for this is, like just the base, like the foundation of like, if you do this one habit, then you are more likely to engage in all the other habits. For a lot of people, and this is going to be super controversial, for a lot of people, that keystone habit is weighing themselves in the morning, because people that do that every day, there's actually statistics to show that people who maintain weight loss and have the most longevity in a healthy lifestyle are people that consistently weigh themselves daily, because it's a keystone habit that kind of just reinforces like, hey, I'm still in this. Like, I'm still doing this today. Like, and it's starting your day off with something that maybe like the cold shower, maybe it's something you don't want to do, but it reinforces like, I am committed to myself in some way. Obviously, stepping on the scale every day is not an everyone type of thing, but if you can start to develop a healthier relationship with that, there is research to show that that can actually be really beneficial. But a keystone habit can be anything based on you, based on your personality. I had a friend I still have a friend. She's still alive. I don't know why I said had, but I have a friend who her keystone habit is a freaking multivitamin. And if she doesn't take that, she doesn't do anything else for the rest of the day. I laugh about it, but it's dead serious. Like, it's so strange. And she knows it's weird. So she'll laugh about it. But for a lot of people, a keystone habit is a morning routine, and like whatever sets you up to continue on with better habits throughout the day. And if your weekend is something you really struggle with being off track on, I encourage you to just take a harder look at that and see like how many of your weekday habits are you totally throwing out the window and just like kind of not doing any of it. What can you do to keep a little bit of consistency in there? Because it's not going to be the same. At the end of the day, your weekends are never going to be the same. But what elements can you take to just have some consistency in like setting your mind right on those weekends?
Yeah, I really like that. And I think it's important to, as much as we can, to continue the habits that we have that keep us on track and keep them on, and have something, even if it's like a modified morning routine, but just something to kind of keep that consistency and kind of, again, kind of prime your body to be like, hey, it's the weekend, but we're still staying on track. So one of those things for me, and it's a little bit different if I feel like for a lot of people right now, because it is freezing in a lot of parts of the States, but I love to start my morning with some sort of movement. And so I loved being able to wake up, and part of where I live is it gets so hot so early. So I have to get up and like walk my dog. Basically, it's like the first thing I do. Otherwise, it's going to be just miserable for both of us. So that was something I really liked doing, because I was able to get in like 3,000 steps before like 8 a.m. before I had like my morning coffee or whatever it was. During the winters, it's a little bit different. I typically take them in the afternoons now, but I feel like it's really easy to just kind of like, I mean, we're talking about the weekends, but like get up and immediately start doing things without kind of taking care of anything first. So one of the things I tell my clients is, if you have something that is a priority to you, try to get it done early, because then it's not like 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night and you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't done this, I haven't done that, I haven't done this. And it's like, well, I'm tired, I just want to go to bed, or I just want to relax. So whatever it might be in the morning, like if you know that you're going to be out, if you know you're not going to have an opportunity to like walk around, maybe just do that first thing in the morning and kind of get all those things checked off. So you just feel better about your day and you feel more relaxed going into, again, whatever situation you're going into that evening, that afternoon, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I will find any excuse I can to not do shit on the weekend evenings, like anything at all. Like, oh man, I cannot imagine like getting myself to get up and go to the gym at like 5 p.m. on a Saturday. Oh, that sounds awful. Yeah, there was a time in my life where like that was something I could get myself to do, but it's not now. And like even on the weekdays, like if I don't go to the gym in the morning at this point, like it is not happening that day, because by the time I finish work, I'm like, the only thing that sounds good is laying on the couch and like vegging out for a little bit. And then after that, it's like game over. So if I feel that way, I know a lot of other people feel that way. So definitely on the weekends, like if you're going to make working out a part of your weekend, which it doesn't have to be, but if it is, definitely try to just get it done early, because weekends are the time for impromptu plans. It's the time for making, last minute dinner plans or meeting up with friends. So it's most likely going to take a back seat if you push it off. So definitely just knocking it out and setting that tone.
Yeah. And this tip kind of goes back to what we were saying in the beginning, is kind of like setting the context and figuring out what your goals are and how that's going to look different for you versus someone else, but remembering your why. So I think this is really important to really consider, and like thinking, why am I trying to make healthier choices? Why am I not going to give in and do what everyone else is going to do? Like, why am I going to limit myself to a couple drinks? Like, because it's going to make me feel better. I'm not going to be hungover on Sunday and I can get my workouts in. Like, just kind of like things like that. Cause I think it sets the context when you're out at dinner or out at lunch or whatever it is, and why you're making those choices, and also your mindset around it too, because I think that that really makes a huge difference. So instead of sitting there the entire time being like, I can't have this, I can't have that, like I'm miserable because I can't eat the way everyone else is, like, why are you doing this? Like, no one is forcing you to diet. This is a decision that you came to. These are the goals that you want to reach. And so, yes, you might have to implement a little discipline or eat a little bit differently than other people, but that makes the decision making a little bit easier. So it's not necessarily like, I can't have this. It's like, I'm making a choice to not have this. This is a choice that I'm making. No one's forcing me to. And I know that if I make this decision, it's going to be easier to make decisions like this in the future.
Yeah. On the note of the why, because I know you do this too, I love to push people to dig into that when I talk to clients, potential clients. I just love digging into the why. It's for a reason too, because when we get down to these things, these barriers on the weekends where we're like, I fell off this weekend, I don't know what to do, right? The why is almost never like, because I want to look good naked, or I want to just like feel a little better. Like the why are things like, I want to do things for me. I want to stop being a people pleaser and doing things just because other people want me to, but I want to like take control of my lifestyle for me. Another one that I hear all the time is like, I just am sick of the all or nothing mindset of constantly feeling like I'm trying to make up for the weekend, constantly feeling like I'm always like 2 steps behind, and just feeling so frustrated and guilty and shameful about myself, my decisions over the weekend. Another one is energy. Like I am so sick of being tired. I'm tired of being tired. I hear that all the time. Those are the whys that are powerful, that go beyond a weight and go beyond like a measurement or anything like that. And here's what they all have in common for like staying on track on the weekends. Like if we are sick of feeling guilty all week long for the damage we did on the weekend, like then that ties us further into, we need to make decisions that make us proud on the weekend, small changes to what we have done before that, moderate ourselves a little bit more. Like maybe we leave half the entree, maybe we only have one drink. Those are the choices that stop that cycle from happening. Energy, for example, if we are drained of energy after the weekend because we ate like crap, we drank a ton, and we go into Monday feeling hungover and bloated, like our energy is going to suck. So if our why is to boost our energy and to actually feel better just in life in general, then what we do on the weekend is arguably the most important thing, the most important choices that we have to make in front of us to make that happen. So I think bringing that up, Christina, was such a good point, because like our why is what's going to pull us off that ledge in those moments. And those moments are going to be what really define the progress that we make, not just physically, but like with our mindset.
Yeah. And I love your follow up. And I feel like it was such a good like elaboration. And that makes me think of like when it comes to indulging. So we're talking about, healthy eating and making healthy choices and only having one drink versus, 3 or 4, things like that. Like, I think that a lot of people know it's like, okay, on the weekend, I need to make healthier choices, healthier options. But when it comes to indulging, one of the things that I like to think about is like, do I really need this? Like, is this going to make me feel good in 10 minutes, in 30 minutes, in a few hours? Like, am I going to feel good about my choices Sunday morning when I'm hungover or like on Monday? So, your first bite of cake or, whatever it might be, like might taste really good. Your 100th bite is probably not going to taste as good. Same thing if you're on your third bag or third basket of chips, like it's not going to taste like as good. So indulging, like we definitely encourage our clients, we indulge absolutely, but it kind of gets to a point where it's like, you don't need to go all the way and just go to the point of just feeling like sick or gross, which is really hard for people. But I think once you kind of eliminate that all or nothing mentality and you have this idea where like, it's not like I can't have any alcohol, I can't have any carbs, I can't have any dessert, I can't have any chips I can't have any bread, I can't have any of that. If you just say like, maybe I'll pick like 1 to 2 things that I'll have and indulge with, and that'll kind of be something I can stick with. Like, so for me, if I was thinking like, I might have 1 glass of wine and maybe split a dessert with someone or something like that, or whatever it might be, like I'm allowing myself to say, I'm going to indulge. I'm just going to pick, and I'm not going to eat everything in sight. So I kind of really like those questions where it's like, I don't know, or if you're like out to dinner with a spouse and you are celebrating something and you want to split a dessert, like instead of just saying, oh my gosh, I ate something bad, or I had carbs, or I had dessert, just kind of allowing that, but not going overboard. So I know that we always preach moderation, not deprivation. But those are some good questions to kind of think about too.
Yeah, I think what's so important is to give yourself permission to have the things that typically you'd write off when you go on a diet or try to lose weight. Because when you give yourself that permission, just immediately it removes the shiny object syndrome of like, I can't have this, I have to have all of it when I'm faced with the opportunity. Because like I've seen it in people who literally are on like day 2 of a diet where they're like, I'm not having any carbs. And the second they're presented with like chips at the table, they're like, screw this, I'm having all the chips. And it's because it like that mindset just promotes scarcity of I can't have this, I can't have this, I can't have this. And it just makes our mind, our physiology want to overindulge. So if you give yourself permission to say, I'm going to have dessert and I'm going to have this dinner and I'm going to enjoy it, like that is damage control in and of itself. Because as soon as you give yourself permission, you are removing the guilt of taking that first bite, of having a couple of bites, of splitting it with someone. And most of the time you can kind of just like have it be that. And then all of a sudden you've had like, 3 bites of a cheesecake and you're like, I'm good now. That's all I need.
Yeah, exactly. Like I would rather have a client like say yes to the dessert, have a couple bites and be like, cool, like that's it. So I have a client in mind who came to me and she had this way of thinking where she would eat as clean as possible. And then the weekends would come and her and her husband like to go out to eat. And she would go out and she was finally in a position where she could have the food that she said that she wasn't allowed to eat during the weekday. And so she would sit down, eat as much as possible, and would have dessert, would have as much as she could to drink, and then would come home. And it was like, well, I've already ate this. So this is my only day. So I might as well keep going, and would eat her pantry when she got home. And she would feel awful the next day. And so I think it's really important, like you said, like give yourself a permission, maybe have that one meal, but don't allow that one meal to turn into the next day or 2 days later. And then kind of have that like screw it mentality. I'm going to get back on Monday. So one of the things that I think we've talked about this a lot, it's kind of like if you go over your macros, or let's say you do accidentally overindulge a little bit, maybe you had a couple extra drinks than you were expecting, maybe everyone got dessert and no one wanted to share. So you got your own, or whatever it might be. And you're feeling a little guilty. Instead of just saying, screw it, I'm just going to keep going. It's kind of the same analogy as like, if you have a flat tire, like instead of saying, oh, well, I have a flat tire, so I might as well get out and stab the other 3. It's kind of that same thing. So just kind of just getting back on track and be like, I didn't make the best decisions, but that doesn't mean that I can't make a better decision when I get home or the very next day, instead of waiting to restart on Monday.
Yeah, I love it. I think another thing that I like to encourage is setting separate weekend goals. So instead of just saying, I hit my macros 7 days a week and I will find any way in the universe to do it. A lot of times with our clients, we will set separate weekend goals. So it might be a tangible separate goal, like instead of macros, it's calories and protein, or like using our hunger fullness scale, but doing so, with specific like portion size goals in mind or whatever, right? It really doesn't matter what it is, but like setting something different, because that's acknowledging that the weekends are different and they need to be handled differently. Or it could be like setting a theme of, I'm going to make sure I hit like this amount of water, or I'm going to make sure I prioritize movement in some way, shape, or form over the weekend. It doesn't matter what that is, but like setting a separate goal where we can like actually feel good about like checking that off, because like maybe getting a workout at the gym is just so unrealistic on the weekend. But doing so, like instead prioritizing movement, maybe we go on a walk after dinner one night or something, like that is something we can be like, oh, I checked it off. Like I did prioritize movement over the weekend. And this all just comes back to like, are we just trying to live a healthier lifestyle? Okay, we just need to move in ways that make us feel good. We need to put things in our body that make us feel better, and like just generally make choices that prioritize ourselves. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. And oftentimes we get like siloed into this fitness bubble of like, it's macros and it's training at the gym like a bodybuilder. And it's just those things. And if we're not doing those things, then we are a failure. So I think like getting out of that bubble is so crucial to staying on track on the weekends, because that's not the majority of the people listening to this podcast. It's not the majority of the people in this country trying to live a better lifestyle. So set separate goals that you hit on Saturday and Sunday, and adjust so that it's flexible, and let success be defined in different ways depending on the context that you're in. And if you do that, then you're going to be able to continue being imperfectly consistent instead of perfectly inconsistent.
Yes, I feel like we could end it right there, but there are a couple more things I want to hit on. So I have one client in particular who, her big thing was on the weekends, she was just never home. She was never at her house, and she felt like she was out all day long. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was just plan, like have a couple snacks. And whether it's just like throwing a protein shake in her purse, like, they have those little like Fairlife or whatever it might be, you're packing like a protein bar, or, an apple or something like that, so she could eat while she was out and not go to wherever she was and just eat the first thing she found because she was so hungry. So that was one of the things that we kind of planned, is just like, you're going to be out and about, or even if you don't really know what your plans are, at least just having snacks or something. I think that's really helpful. And I have a lot of clients who don't like to cook on the weekends because they're like, I just want to relax. Like, I just want to,
I'm raising my hand. That's me.
So one of the things I like to do is have maybe like a prepped protein or something like that. So you're not necessarily having to like recreate this like huge meal, but you have some healthy options that you can kind of just grab and go throughout the day or throughout the, whatever it might be. You're not having to create this huge fancy meal, but you still have some healthier options, or having some like things that you could just kind of like heat up, whether they're like frozen meals or something. And again, it kind of goes back to like, what is your downfall on the weekend and how can you set yourself up to be in a better position? So there are some other things, but it's just, making sure you're hydrated, making sure that you have, the movement in whatever that might be for the weekend. So, and then I think at the end of the day, sometimes memories over macros. Like, I know that we just spent this whole entire time talking about like all these tactical things that you can take away. But at the end of the day, sometimes you just kind of say, screw it, and you don't track. And that's, again, it's going to look different on everyone depending on the context that you're in. But sometimes you're just in a position where it just like doesn't really make sense, and you just want to enjoy the moment. Maybe you haven't seen someone for like 5 years or something, and you just really want to be present, or, whatever it might be. That's okay too, as long as it's not every single meal, every single weekend. But I think it's just being, again, like reflecting and just being like, is this me being lazy? Is this me just not wanting to track? Or is this really just something where like once in a lifetime type thing where I'm just going to choose memories?
Absolutely. I think that's a great point, and it's a great finishing point, which makes me sad that I want to add this one thing on, but In terms of the weekends as well, I just thought of one more situation. A lot of times, we're not dealing with the weekends alone. We have a partner, we have a husband, a wife, a roommate, whatever. So a lot of times communication is a huge part of the weekends, because for me, I know Aaron wants to eat out every meal on the weekend, like just all weekend long. And that's how he is. And I've like become more like that. But when I'm trying to like not be a total asshole about my food intake, I will communicate and I will say, hey, I would like to just eat one meal per day out on the weekends instead of two or three, and just be a little bit more mindful about like, maybe I get in like my final leftovers of the meal prep for the week for lunch, and then we go out to dinner. Right. And usually it's no problem, but it's just like communicate that. Right. And like let someone know. And they're most likely like, we all want to get better usually. So like, they're probably going to want to be in on it with you and just like, oh yeah, we could maybe just like cook lunch together. Or maybe we could do a date night in on Friday night and then go out to eat on Saturday. Right. So like game plan that with your significant other, with your spouse, with your friends, so that, you can feel like if something is a super high priority to you in terms of your macros or your health or your fitness at any given point in time, like you can actually make that work better. So definitely communication with other people as well.
Yes, that's huge. And I can't believe I didn't think of that. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because
same.
Again, I have a lot of people, a lot of spouses, they'll say like,
you have a lot of spouses.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of married people.
No,
but
I said,
I don't. Yeah.
You have multiple husbands.
I wish I'd have so much more done around the house. But like, because a lot of people will say my spouse is my partner in crime. Like they encourage me to do this, or we kind of feed off of each other. And so it's really, really important that, they can't read your mind. So if you're in a fat loss phase, or if you're trying to get healthier, or whatever it might be, it is super important that you communicate that to them, because that's also going to help a little bit with the feelings of like disconnect or like being upset or whatever it might be. So I think that's really important. So whether that's your spouse, your roommate, friends, your mom, like whatever it might be, having that communication in place. So
absolutely.
I think that that's a really good kind of ending point for today. So just kind of to recap is like remembering your why, figuring out the context of your certain situation and why you are making the choices that you're making. And so sticking into a routine, whether it's the same habits and same routines that you follow during the weekday, or whether it's a new routine that you establish on the weekends, and planning ahead. So whether that's like maybe looking up the restaurant that you're going to and planning off of that, or just making sure that you're structuring your day around going out to eat or something, whatever it might be, packing some healthier foods and snacks, choosing healthier meals and drinks when you're out, or maybe just limiting yourself, or kind of giving yourself permission to indulge in a few things. And then when you are indulging, just make sure it kind of just stays within that one meal versus 1 to 2 days, or saying, screw it, I'm going to start again on Monday. Making sure you're staying hydrated, movement, meal prep, communicating with others. And again, sometimes at the end of the day, memories over macros.
Love it.
Awesome. So guys, we hope that you enjoyed this episode and got a lot out of it. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can find both of us on Instagram. You can find me at Christy Lynn Fit, and Marissa is at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope to see you back next week.